Up with education, down, down with deportation. Up with education, down, down with deportation.
America has allowed gangs to enter our country.
The migrants that are coming, they're taking over every block right now.
The city of Chicago is going to go up in smoke. It's going to go up in flames.
Gangs in Chicago are angry over the influx of migrants and criminals in their city. They say money that should be going to the African-American community on the South Side is instead going to what they call non-citizens, and warn that turf wars between Chicago's gangs and groups like Venezuela's Tren de Aragua could see Chicago, quote, go up in flames. Photographer Matt McDermott and I traveled to Chicago's South Side to see what was happening for ourselves after we heard about a police report last month that the Tren de Aragua gang had taken over an office building there. We spoke to a number of young, hardcore gang members, as well as gang elders who have retired from the life, and just regular citizens who are very much part of the community. And they're all furious at the estimated $500 million that's reportedly been funneled toward new migrants in Chicago since 2022.
The more and more they ignore the problems that are going on with these illegal migrants coming into the country and ignoring the residents that are dealing with the problems in this neighborhood, it just keeps getting worse and worse for the Kamala Harris campaign. Hello and welcome to the Suggest Sevis channel. I am your host, Candace Jackson, and we have to get into the illegal migrant issues that's going on in Chicago. The residents there are now speaking out about the Venezuelan gangs that are taking over the city, and they're clashing with the Chicago gangs that currently are in these neighborhoods. Kamala Harris has now been doing a roundabout of interviews on different networks. She just completed an interview with Oprah Winfrey where it was discussed about some of her policies and the economy and also the border control issue. It was a very cringy interview. But I wanted to get into one of the audience members' questions that they had for her concerning the border policy. Take a look.
The immigration question for you is, when you become president, what would be your specific steps? Yeah, of course. What would be specific steps to strengthening the border?
So it's a wonderful and important question. You know, my background was as a prosecutor, and I was also the elected attorney general for 2 terms of a border state. So this is not a theoretical issue for me. This is something I've actually worked on. Okay. I have prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. I take very seriously the importance of having a secure border and ensuring the safety of the American people. Sadly, where we are now can be traced most recently back to the fact that when the United States Congress, members of the Congress, including some of the most conservative Republicans, came up with a border security bill. And here's what that border security bill would have done. It would have put 1,500 more border agents at the border. Let me tell you, those border agents are working around the clock. It would have just been about giving them some support and relief, which is probably why the border agents actually endorsed the bill. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl. And I'm looking at people from all over the country here. So I don't need to tell the folks who are watching this what fentanyl has done to families, to kids in our country, and the need to take seriously stemming the flow coming into our country and address.
You know, she acts like she's not in office now. And she acts like she wasn't the border czar. She doesn't tell the complete story about what was exactly in that border bill and why it was shot down. Trump had nothing to do with the Republicans shooting down the bill. They had a lot of spending of money going overseas to Ukraine, Israel, various other types of issues that they wanted to fund that was in that bill that had nothing to do with border control. That is the reason why the bill was shot down. Trump didn't call the White House Republicans to shoot it down for his campaign. This is ridiculous because at this point, you're saying that Trump has way more power being outside of the White House. He isn't even president. He has more power than the president, the vice president, in Congress, in the Supreme Court as a whole. That's what she's indicating here. So that's an excuse on her part. That's a way to gaslight American people, that to let them know, to distract them, that she failed at securing the border. But let's see if she's going to answer the questions, because right now she's, giving circular answers in a blame game at this point. Let's see.
Addressing that extraordinary and tragic issue in terms of its effect. The bill would have allowed us to have more resources to prosecute transnational criminal organizations. And it would have been part of the solution. And Donald Trump called up those folks and said, don't put that bill on the floor for a vote. He blocked the bill. And you know why?
Why?
Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And he has put his personal political security before border security. Because understand, even in the intervening months, what that bill would have done to give support to folks who care about this issue. And this again gets to the point about, what does leadership really look like? And is it about you, or is it about the people? Right. Is it about running on profit?
Okay, I have to say this as well. She still never answered the question. We're still waiting on the answer from her to this young man's question. The question was, and I wrote it down here, what would be specific steps for strengthening the border? That was the question. She still has not answered that question. She's just still blaming Donald Trump. The thing about it is that when Trump was in office, the country didn't see this influx of immigrants. Over 10 million or so, I believe about 12 million or so now it is, has came into the country. There's been influx in mostly pertaining in Black communities throughout the country. There's a lot of crime. This happened on their watch, the Biden and Harris watch, which she led. She was a leader to be the border control, to get the border under control. That was her job to do. One job she had, and she failed at that.
My work and my career has always been about saying, let's fix problems. Let's address the needs, because we know it's within our capacity to do that.
So to answer Justin's question, now that that bill has gone and hasn't passed, will you reintroduce that?
Absolutely. And when I am elected president of the United States, I will make sure that bill gets to my desk and I will sign it into law.
Thank you.
Wow. So Oprah basically had to intervene and say, okay, besides all of that, what are going to be your steps? And that was the only way she was able to answer the question. So with that being said, I wanted to get into this story by the New York Post. They went out to the Chicago area in the community and questioning I think it was the Black Chicago gangs that was there that are experiencing this influx of the Venezuelan gangs. And it's beginning to be a lot of tension going on in the city. So without ado, let's take a look at this.
America has allowed gangs to enter our country.
The migrants that are coming, they're taking over every block right now.
The city of Chicago is going to go up in smoke. It's going to go up in flames.
Gangs in Chicago are angry over the influx of migrants and criminals in their city. They say money that should be going to the African American community on the South Side is instead going to what they call non-citizens, and warn that turf wars between Chicago's gangs and groups like Venezuela's Tren de Aragua could see Chicago, quote, go up in flames. Photographer Matt McDermott and I traveled to Chicago's South Side to see what was happening for ourselves after we heard about a police report last month that the Tren de Aragua gang had taken over an office building there. We spoke to a number of young, hardcore gang members, as well as gang elders who have retired from the life, and just regular citizens who are very much part of the community. And they're all furious at the estimated $500 million that's reportedly been funneled toward new migrants in Chicago since 2022. And they aren't happy either about what they say are Venezuelan criminal gangs that are leaving the shelters and spilling out into the South Side into abandoned buildings. I spoke to Tyrone Muhammad of Ex-Cons for Trump, who runs a street patrol and violence prevention program. He's gone straight since his days as an enforcer for the Gangster Disciples. And he said the situation is very tense on the South Side as turf battles between the local gangs and Venezuelan migrants heat up.
It is impossible to release gang members and criminals into our country through the borders and broken walls, and then infiltrate them in our community that's already impoverished, that's already broken, that's already disinvested. And when the black gangs, the leadership in the black gangs in Chicago get fed up with the illegalities and the criminal activity of these migrants or non-citizens, the city of Chicago is going to go up in smoke, it's going to go up in flame, and there's going to be nothing that the National Guard or our government can do about it when the bloodshed hit the streets, blacks against migrants.
Zach?
See, and I think this is what they really want, is this all-out war between illegal immigrants versus these black people in the black communities here. The South Side of Chicago, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong about it, I believe this is where Obama is from, or grew up at, or was around it, or something like that, if I can remember. I think they had like a whole movie about it. But Oprah is from here. Of course, I just mentioned Obama, and they don't do anything about what the complaints of the community is. We thought that it was just going to be a racial war between black and white. I think that this is heading into illegal immigrants, illegal migrants coming over here in these black neighborhoods, and it's going to create an all-out war. The more and more that these mayors and city councilmen are ignoring the issues, and even the government. These illegal immigrants start showing up in Chicago around in 2022. So they've been dealing with this for over 2 years. There's been tons of videos of residents speaking out about this. And frankly, I'm getting freaking pissed off about all of this going on in these communities. And the government is doing nothing about it. They got you focused on everything else. But what the residents are saying, Al Sharpton, Joy Reid of MSNBC have all black people focus on, Donald Trump said cats and dogs. It's just crazy to me.
Massey did time in state prison with Tyrone Muhammad, although he's only 27. He's a leader on the streets and said he's disgusted by the money going to Venezuelan migrants at the expense, he says, of the African-American community.
I finally actually talked to him on the translator app, and he told me all the things that he got going on, how they help him get a car, apartment, clothes, link. So it's just like, I just be looking at it like they ain't got no Social Security, no where they come from. He probably not even here legally.
They get right here, they get quick housing, quick funding, food, they get cars with no license. They can't even read English and stuff like that. So they get all these perks when they get here, and we still here starving. So what we gonna do about it? Are y'all gonna listen to our cries?
Corey Rogers was a Blackstone gang member for years. He drove us around the South Side and showed us areas where he said Trendo Awagwa and other criminal gangs are setting up shop, and what he called showing the flag, which means brandishing their weapons in front of like a housing project.
The migrants that are coming, they're taking over every block right now in this area. Right now, you don't see them because they come out at night. They said they took this courtway over probably by last week. He said it was 100 Venezuelans standing out in the front right here.
Terry, is it an abandoned building? How do they just take it over?
They just, when you take over something, you just stand outside, and that's called showing the flag.
What kind of guns?
Semi-automatics, anything you name, you're gonna see it on the street. These boys got so many big guns that if they're 150 pounds, the gun is bigger than them. I swear.
But they know how to handle it, right? They know it. Tell me about the fact that they're criminals, right? This is a criminal element. These aren't just a bunch of Venezuelans that walked over the border and used to be gardeners back home, right?
Right. And they come from the gangland. They come from rougher gangs than us.
One gang member who only gave his name as David on a particularly dangerous drug dealing corner on the South Side did not hold back when he talked about the influx of criminal gangs from other countries into Chicago.
The real issue is that America has allowed gangs to enter our country. Gangs that they would consider terrorist groups that are formed here. We are terrorist groups. If we're in a gang, they let terrorists in our country.
The Reverend Corey Brooks.
And he is so right about that. So when Trump was saying that these other countries are emptying out their jails and they are sending them over here to America, these people are the evidence. Here's the evidence in your face. But they call Trump a racist for saying these things. But these same people won't even go down to any of these areas and speak to any of these residents. New York Post is a very much conservative media company. They put out a lot of conservative news, but yet they are the ones that are speaking to the residents of Chicago about these problems. While Kamala Harris and Joy Reid and all of them, I'm going to keep saying her name, is gaslighting you and saying that, oh, it's racist for Trump to say anything about deportation. As I played in the beginning of this video with Kamala Harris talking about up with education, down with deportation. She has no intention of deporting any of these migrants. She's saying everything she can just to get into the White House and making promises that she knows she will not keep.
He's disgusted with Democratic policies and said that Black Lives Matter, for example, has never reached out to help him or anyone else trying to improve conditions on the South Side.
So they didn't have an issue tearing up the streets in 2020 for George Floyd. But now that you have people here that are Black, where their neighborhoods and everything are being taken over from illegal migrants, they're nowhere to be found. Okay.
Chicago is a blue city. Illinois is a blue state. There's no doubt about it that the majority of our neighborhood, they're going to continue to vote Democrat until they wake up. The good news is that there are a lot of people who are responding and waking up and saying, listen, we're not going to take this. We're not going to stand for this. We're going to vote differently. And they're now accepting some of the values that I hold dear and some of the values that the conservative Republican Party holds so dear. And so for a lot of people, it's not about the person, it's about the policies that we're fed up with. And as a result, I think this is going to be the largest amount of people who have voted for the Republican president in Chicago that we've seen.
I also spoke to one Venezuelan man who was so scared of being identified that he put a hoodie on and refused to face the camera. He told me in Spanish that he had to flee the building where he was being housed because a Venezuelan criminal gang took it over. He said if they knew he was talking, they'd end his family's life back in Venezuela with one bullet. You know, what struck me the most about our week in Chicago was how intelligent and self-aware these gang members and ex-gang members are about their community. You understand when you talk to them that joining a gang and making big money selling drugs is often too tempting to resist when faced with the lack of other real opportunities to make money. And for a place known mostly in news stories for being bloody and violent at night, the area is like a village during the daytime. Everyone knows each other, and believe it or not, there's a friendly vibe. But we spoke to a lot of people and their patience is being stretched thin. I would not be surprised to see the gangs here taking action once the Venezuelans try to get a real foothold here.
So you have that, and you can see that these people here patience are running thin. Again, just to bring this all to a close here, the Democrat Party, just like the Reverend said, they have been voting over 50 years or so for Democrats. And the communities have been ruined. The policies of the Democratic Party in these communities have pretty much ruined the local communities. Chicago used to be a very beautiful, vibrant city, and now it's pretty much just overrun by crime. They was already facing a crime issue. Now it's just being overran with illegal immigrants in their crime now. So I'm glad that the residents are coming to their senses and trying to vote differently. It just only took 50 years to do so, but hopefully that this has woken them up. And if the rest of the country don't wake up with what's really going on here, then your city can soon be overtaken, just like Chicago, Aurora, Colorado, Springfield, Ohio, New York, all of these places that have been overran with illegal migrants here. So I hope that you pray and open your eyes before you vote for your demise.